the apocalypse, a setting characterized by the unthinkable, a world where chaos, ironically, is the order of the day. Yet for some, it's not so much about what is left, but what may lie ahead. Take a trip to the Big Mountain Research Center and discover the secrets of pre-war scientific brilliance. Inside this cloistered crater lies the remaining heartbeat of a new future. Or so these robots may have you think. To say that Old World Blues is a cheesy sci-fi setting is selling its premise short. Underneath the wacky image of colorful robot scorpions and megalomania is actually a narrative concerning the moral nature of human beings and their relationship with themselves and the world around them. Past the fanciful and satirical promotion of Big MT's scientific research is the worst of humanity, left to their own devices. And it all starts and ends here, the think tank, a group of some of the best scientists around the world. It is made of Dr. Boros, Dr. Dalla, Dr. 8, Dr. Klein, and Dr. O. Dr. Mobius was also a member of the think tank, but he has a peculiar role in Big Mountain that I'll get to later. Their purpose and mission was to help humanity reach a new age of prosperity. Through rare minerals, advancements in technology, and experimental projects, the think tank was meant to push humanity into the future. Then came the Great War, when the world fought in a nuclear boxing match. While the Big Mountain remained relatively unscathed, its inhabitants were a different story. To avoid the limitations of physical aging, the scientists chose to transition their brains into artificial vessels. These new bodies would preserve their intelligence and enhance their capabilities with the longevity of artifice and the power of binary. It worked out, and they were able to continue their research and experimentation. Their intelligence remained as brilliant as ever. Or so they thought. Their sanity started crumbling. Their purpose became soon forgotten in the midst of their many projects, which began to reflect the unsavory secrets each of the scientists harbored. And this is when New World hopes became Old World blues. Each scientist had their own domain of research and specialization. These brilliant minds also all have some unsavory traits they do a poor job of hiding. Dr. Mobius, former think tank colleague, is quoted with saying,
"And really, when they were humans, they weren't very good humans."
So, as the courier reluctantly interacts with the think tank during their visit to the Big Mountain, and as they continue to explore every nook and cranny of the crater, of which they are explicitly told not to by the think tank because of blah 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 blah, I'm smarter than you, it becomes clear who's really the bad guy here.
This is a most serious matter, requiring the most serious of detentions.
But before that, let's understand the think tank individually. Dr. Boros is the head of animalogy, beastology, and DNA scrambling technology. He's also every animal lover's worst nightmare. He used his scientific smarts to feed his pet dog Gabe with drugs. The same Gabe that was his only friend and is now an oversized, aggressive cyberdog. He's also quite petty. Within the halls of the X8 research facility, the intercom screeches with his voice, pettiness and venom in every word used to demean Richie, a bully from his old schooling days. This pettiness bleeds into his arrogance and ignorance. The latter is especially prevalent with the existence of two certain creatures, the Night Stalker and the Cazador, two of the deadliest creatures in the Mojave wasteland. In the eyes of Boros, they're magnificent and definitely not supposed to be able to reproduce. But they did, and they still do, and that's why there's lots of them, terrorizing the wasteland. Dr. Dalla is the head of lobotomite study, having 211 doctorates on topics such as mineralogy, humanology, medicine, and holotape edietics. I probably mispronounced that, my bad. She is obsessed with the human body, which she regards as a teddy bear for reasons. It is this fascination, mixed with a dose of immorality, that has contributed to the large amounts of lobotomites that roam the crater, attacking anyone that isn't one of their own. These teddy bears are hostile and completely broken by the think tank's experiments. Dr. 8 is an acousticist. I'm learning. Dr. 8 is an acousticist. He's lost the ability to verbally communicate after an incident with a visitor. He instead uses sound waves to vocalize his thoughts. This doesn't stop him from feeling the frustration of not being able to clearly and accurately voice his voice. And in a social work environment like a laboratory, that's a horrible position to be in. Chris Avallone, writer of New Vegas, states that this muteness allows the player to lend their voice to Dr. 8, in the same way we project personality onto voiceless companions like Rex and Edie. Dr. O is a robotics specialist, constructing, deconstructing, and so on. He also has a vendetta with Mr. House and his Securitron robots. He's even gone as far as to create his own Securitron as a mockery of Mr. House robotics, the psychotically self-aware Muggy. He's got a very out-there ego on him, not unlike a TV personality, and he's the least respected amongst the think tank. His own name a pseudo-indicator for the absence of useful things he's capable of doing. Low-key, this is probably the same type of guy to create Labris and make her fight her sisters for research. I'm looking at you. Lastly is perhaps the figurehead of the think tank's madness, hypocrisy, and outright tyranny, Dr. Klein, chief researcher on logistics and ideology and de facto leader of the think tank. To keep it short, he's the boss and sure acts like one, a terrible one nonetheless. And that's just the start, literally. The first encounter with the think tank alone shows their dysfunctionality and lack of true unity, especially with Dr. Klein attempting to override everyone else's opinion. When egos clash in a confined environment, it becomes toxic and counterintuitive. Hell, Klein can't even remember why they tasked the courier to retrieve certain tech for them. Speaking of egos, these robots have a lot of it, to the point where they are blind to the obvious. Their egos are so large that although Klein might seem to be the dominant one in conversation, every voice must be heard, even if that means arguing. That's not to mention that they are extremely overconfident, in spite of their lack of progress against Mobius, and they treat the courier as a lesser in all things, especially intellect. If there is one defining trait of these megalomaniac overlords, it would be ignorance. As brainbots, they've elected to desensitize their feelings in the pursuit of scientific perfection. Yes, feelings. We all have them, we all act on them. The complex relationship between our feelings and our thoughts is one defined by experiences and the maturity of our own wisdom. Not wisdom in the sense of unlocking some factoid of life that places us in an echelon of intelligence above others, but rather our predetermined responses to situations we have faced before. With the think tank being quite frankly insane, this has led to an unmistakable mark on their small world of the Big Mountain as a result of their high intelligence and twisted emotions. We aren't talking about over-the-counter prototypes or paceogram fitness tests. We are talking about lobotomy, biological splicing, robotics, and even ballistic testing. The evidence is as clear as the crater is deep. Various technologies in the Big Mountain are actually semi-sentient, coded with personalities, some subservient, others, unique. But worse than a binary love triangle with light switches, I'm not kidding, are the biological experiments of the crater. Prisoners of the Great War remain trapped in Little Yangtze, ghoulified but unable to leave due to bomb collars around their necks. And remember Boros' experiments? Night Stalkers, Cazadors, robot dogs, all artificially modified creations that will attack anybody. Even the courier's own brain couldn't escape the madness. Once separated from its body, the brain becomes extremely sarcastic and quick to assert its pure logic and intelligence into talking down to its still functioning host. I mean, how would you feel if your own brain started sassing you for completely normal and natural things like urinating? Yet, it's the brain that ultimately reveals the true problem of the think tank as a whole, and it does so in a way that fits the themes of Old World Blues. In persuading your own brain that it's incomplete without its proper host, there's a theme in between the lines that can be understood, and that theme is humanity. humanity in all its imperfections. During a multitude of side quests, the player character, the courier, has the opportunity to speak with individual members of the think tank. Besides getting to know their purpose and being barraged with their egos, gives the courier moments to socialize and to better understand both the big mountain and the scientists themselves. In a couple of instances, the player is tasked with searching for clues and items from the nearby Higgs village, such as a teddy bear and a dog bowl belonging to Gabe, Boros' cyberdog. Higgs village is a large warehouse meant to house the scientists in a neighborhood setup, meant to solidify that old American feeling. What it does as well is show the downside to an artificial environment. Although it may appear to be home, it is nothing more than a warehouse with functioning replicas, a hollow inside to a beautiful outside. There are 4 crucial figures whose conversations touch upon the true problems of the think tank: Dr. Boros, Dr. Dala, Dr. Mobius, and your brain. Speaking with Boros and Dala specifically reveals a horrible flaw in their now immortalized existence: the absence of genuine emotion and the denial of very real human feelings. Be it through self-denial or self-repression, the weight of emotion only magnifies, like unpulled weeds or a wasp nest under your deck. It touches upon a hard truth. There is no substitute for human emotions. There are feelings that cannot be replicated without legitimate relationships, be it with ourselves or with others. And there are feelings that will always catch up no matter how far someone might run. In Boros' case, after returning Gabe's bowl to him, nostalgic memories of his dog and the love he had for him awaken his conscience. Although he tries to repress it and forget the memory with bravado and science, he can't. Both guilt and a retrospective love take hold and ultimately begin to refresh his attitude towards living things. Dala's case is interesting, as it touches upon her hypocrisy via her fleshy fascinations. By simply moving their body around, the courier stirs the same hormonal fleshy instincts that make her human. She's called out for this hypocrisy, to which she relents to its truth.
I cannot deny it. The illogic of it. The betrayal of our own beliefs. I blame my curiosity.
Experimenting on lobotomites and treating them like teddy bears. These are substitutes for her, quite frankly, addictive behavior towards the human body. In her case, though, becoming a brainbot did not necessarily impede her ability to feel as much as it distanced her mind from the truth of what she felt. Psychologically, you can't separate the brain from the body without negatively disconnecting the physiological relationship between the two organs. Dala's disconnection is a prime example of this, even if in a very sinful way. In contrast, the courier's brain actually enjoys their bodiless state, very boldly complaining of the body's physical limitations and the subsequent emotional and mental distress that is inflicted upon it. But no matter how much the brain will flaunt its logical advantage over the double-edged biology of the courier, it is still functionally incomplete without its host. Even brainless, you're able to help them fundamentally conceive the notion that, well, the brain is as responsible for your adventures as your biochemistry is. The brain hasn't forgotten about its experiences in a body. But if the think tank is any indication, becoming a desensitized megalomaniac is not a far-flung reality for this vital organ. This is what Mobius touches upon. Both he and Boros said it best.
They have all forgotten themselves. And not only themselves, but the world, sense of time and history. All that is left is what's here.
This sensation is unpleasant. I don't care for it. I don't care for this place either. And I feel as if we've forgotten something.
It could be said that pettiness and impulse are fleeting. Indeed, without deeper feelings to touch upon such as love, respect, or joy, our emotional experiences are very easily forgotten. Forgetting humanity is deep. It is also easy to do. How often are those very senses that drive us to be alive become deadened in the pursuit of other things. Consequently, it is this degree of neglect and imbalance that can transform a person, let alone an entire world. In the wasteland, no matter which one, feelings are overlooked. Feelings and emotions, with all the burdens and strengths that come with them, are somewhat of a negative. In a wasteland with berserker drug addicts, synthetic humanoids, and a fallen angel of vengeance, feelings can be a liability, something that could make you hesitate, something that could get you killed. It is likely a logical analysis of feelings and emotions that prompted the think tank to find a way to be free of them. In September of 1986, Watchmen was released, a breakdown of the superhero genre and an analysis of superheroes for who they are, imperfect. It is a commentary for the contrasts between the superhero identity and its idealisms versus the inherently flawed nature and emotions of human beings. One of these characters is Dr. Manhattan, the only real superhero. With an origin story as ludicrous as it comes, Dr. Manhattan has godlike power, including control over molecules and omniscience. And as a result of being a literal god amongst men, Manhattan has disconnected himself from the mortals that surround him, even going as far as to bring his girlfriend Laurie to Mars and asking her to convince him of the value of human relationships. Sound familiar? This is a vastly different example, but it highlights key aspects that define the fundamental existence of emotions, human nature, and their combined importance. This is not the entire problem with the think tank, though it does play an X factor in their existence. See, the think tank's arrogance has led them to believe that they are above the dual-sided nature of human emotions, and to that end, their new artificial bodies could free them from the grand majority of the bonds that could hold them down and possibly limit their intelligence. Keyword, possibly. It is true that feelings and emotions can end up badly. Frustration can lead to anger. Attraction can become lust. Yearning feelings that seek love and respect can become obsessions that can dramatically affect the course of someone's life. However, that is not to say that feelings and emotions do not have a purpose. Finding that temperance between raw intellect and honest emotions can be beneficial for the development of both. It is feelings of conquest and domination that have led to Caesar's legion. It is patriotism and nostalgia that has essentially crafted the foundations of the new California Republic. It is thrills and vice that has brought life to the Sin City of New Vegas. These are all things that cannot be explained solely by hormones and other brain chemicals. And furthermore, these are things that cannot just be put under a rug and ignored. But that is exactly how the think tank manages their imperfections, by putting on a facade of absolute dependence on science. By attempting to separate themselves from their feelings and emotions, they've magnified the worst in them, while simultaneously repressing the best parts of their humanity. By exchanging one for the other, they've become aloof, and, in their eyes, supposedly untouchable. In their eyes, they've become gods. The gifts of humanity include the intelligence to create a better future, coupled with a physical body that helps it experience all the joys and troubles that come with life. It's these experiences that give birth to new ways of thinking and doing, new ways to problem solve and overcome the difficulties of an imperfect world. Disease, injuries, the physical limitations of the human body, even architecture, transportation, and war. Humanity is inspired to find ways to do better and become better as a result of the wide variety of experiences they feel and endure. And underneath all of that are the principles. The why. Is the way forward meant to help humanity, or just to indulge in the same flawed emotions that keep humanity from progressing? The think tank was equipped to help craft a better future for humanity. However, by constantly choosing to feed on their insecurities and negative emotions, as well as isolation because of a world-ending war, they ended up creating a sort of hell on Earth. A place where repressed feelings and emotions created a feedback of misery, loathing, and ignorance. Perhaps the very nature of the crimes insinuated by the think tank come down to a feeble attempt at playing God, and a very immoral one at that. Ignorance is one thing, and certainly these scientists all have something wrong with them, but you cannot ignore the reality of their actions, especially when most of it is trying to kill people. This is exactly the danger of repressing very real feelings and emotions. Subduing and silencing their conscience has shaped the attitude surrounding these robotic researchers. Yet, the think tank had the right idea, albeit with the wrong method. In a high-pressure position such as researching solutions to end a war, it can be easy to conclude how much of a hindrance human emotions can be when faced with problems far larger than, say, irregular hormones and imbalanced brain chemicals. However, it is learning to manage and discipline emotions that leads to balance, not completely cutting off the very things that help make up the human formula, the human experience. Let's look at context. Faced with war and scientific questions, feelings seem like the least relevant thing to address. Yet, across the wasteland as a whole, emotions and human nature are perhaps the biggest contributing factor to the great problems faced by every single person. This includes the proud and pretentious think tank. It was fear that led to war. It is survival that kept humanity alive. It is pride that makes the think tank think they are better than everyone. Although their human forms are long gone, they are no less human than the courier is. No matter how much they think they've been able to do, the solutions to their problems start with themselves. But that's far more than they'd allow themselves to listen to anyway, which brings us to Mobius. Now comes the plot twist. Remember Dr. Mobius? Throughout the DLC, he's treated as the big bad, his voice blaring across the crater while his army of robo-scorpions attempt to stop the courier from progressing. The think tank describes the madman with a mix of fear and hatred. In reality, Dr. Mobius is actually fairly mellow. He has an addiction to mentats, a sort of intellectual drug, but otherwise he himself is not much of a threat. The classic case would pit him as a clever and devious puppeteer who controls an army of mindless brutes far more powerful than him. But for Dr. Mobius, he's far from the great all-encompassing evil that the think tank. But for Dr. Mobius, he's far from the great all-encompassing evil that the think tank has, up to that point, described him as. You see, Mobius is responsible for the setting of Old World Blues, but not in the way you think he is. I'll let this conversation speak for itself.
Like the think tank, we were all reprogrammed to forget them, take on new names. It enforces the recursion loop in our perception programming. Now, trap is a rather harsh word, like excrement. Not an inappropriate word, but still rather harsh. But, yes, I did take some liberties with their programming. It's all right, they don't remember. I certainly didn't until you said trap, and then I said excrement, and then... The radar fence to keep the think tank hemmed in wasn't really enough. They keep testing things. They would have found a way to disarm it. I suspect I have plan C's in place, but I may have coded myself to forget them, just in case. Probably very dangerous, lethal, or worse. So I had to do something else to keep them occupied here. Or as you like to say, trapped. I prefer to have several plan Bs in case the As fail. Oh, you figured it out. No pun intended. Dr. O, which is actually not his real name multiplied, since you can't multiply his real name in the first place. Ouroboros, Klein, they have all forgotten themselves. And not only themselves, but the world, sense of time, and history. All that is left is what's here. I reprogrammed their chronometers, geometers, and cartography programs. This is now their world, here, Big Mountain. It was a merciful lobotomy, really, thinking back. They were my friends, but sometimes they would take things too far. And the world isn't ready for that kind of too-far thing-taking. That's my professional opinion, anyway. And I am told I was once quite professional.
The immorality and cruelty of the think tank became so awful that Dr. Mobius decided to trap the think tank inside a never-ending loop that would distract them forever from taking their brilliant madness beyond the Big Mountain. I don't want to imagine what a Deathclaw lobotomite looks like. According to Mobius, the supposed main antagonist of the story, the scientists at the think tank weren't that good of people to begin with. By sending out his robo-scorpions and constantly voicing his distaste for the think tank through his intercom, Mobius would keep them distracted, imposing fear and irrationality to counter their brilliance and ingenuity. All this in hopes that their eyes would never go beyond their prison. It's kind of awful if you think about it, limiting their agency to only function within the ruins of the Big Mountain. And by tossing out robo-scorpions, Mobius would keep them away from the keys to freedom, the advanced technologies that could set them free from the confines of the Big Empty, always keeping these solutions within eyesight, but never within reach. When a drug addict is the only one that can see things clearly as they are, then there's something wrong. The think tank has shown that they cannot be trusted with the remnants of civilization because of their arrogance and neglect. While Dr. Mobius is no saint himself, especially after all those stupid robo-scorpions, his overly convoluted plan to keep the think tank trapped inside Big Mountain is the last line of defense against a wasteland filled with scientific abominations. Mobius would even describe that the world isn't ready for that kind of too-far thing-taking, and frankly, the world will never be prepared for the magnitude and the incomprehensive level that has produced the scientific experiments of Big Mountain. What Mobius could not predict, however, was the arrival of the courier. Their gifted brain is an anomaly. It rewired the autodock at such a level that with the right technologies, the think tank could actually be set free. Even though they're trapped in a loop, their raw intelligence is nothing to scoff at. So, Mobius took the brain, after the think tank started fighting with each other. But with the courier's forced hand, the think tank was still able to recover the technologies that they would need in order to escape, with the courier able to retake their brain in the process. It boiled down to the courier to set things right. And while violence is an option against the think tank, Mobius have better ideas. Appeal to their humanity, or rather, what's left of it. Because although they're far gone, science is still their lifeline. The thrills of discovery, the anticipation of equations and solutions, the pursuit of the future. It is science that brought them here. Surely it is science that can help make a difference. Science. We may remember it as mankind's study of the world they inhabit, the things that live on it, and the abstract forces that drive it. The word science comes from a Latin word that meant knowledge, and knowledge is how humanity has been able to advance and grow throughout the ages. There's nothing wrong with science. There's nothing wrong with knowledge. But with knowledge comes the moral responsibility to use it, and that decision will be heavily influenced by two things we cannot explain so easily: human agency and human nature. The think tank's great error was not in crafting monsters or perpetuating life-altering experiments. It was in allowing themselves to become corrupted by their pettiness and shortcomings in their pursuit of human advancement. Their twisted creations were merely byproducts of this self-indulgence. Yes, Dr. Mobius may have trapped them in a memory loop to contain their madness within Big Mountain, but that does not change their natures. It merely limited their terrible actions to a tiny piece of an enormous world. And by no means am I at all justifying their actions. They're awful people at the end of the day. and no amount of psychoanalysis will prove otherwise. It takes the courier, brave enough to address it and call it as it is, to be able to break a terrible cycle, for the good of all things involved. Who knows what would have happened further if Dr. Mobius did not contain the insanity of his colleagues. He had remembered something that the think tank could not. It is that humanity was meant to be educated and nurtured, not played with, to be a gift, not taken for granted. Old world blues is a term for nostalgia, sadness, perhaps even longing. But when we allow ourselves to ruminate too obsessively in such things, we fail to see a future with better things to come. We fail to properly utilize the knowledge that comes from our experiences and feelings. In this state, we too may fall into our own maddening loop, perpetuating the fleeting feelings of our personal memories, unable to let go of things we think we are incapable of overcoming. The world will always move forward. It's just how things are. The question thus remains, can we move forward with it?